I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Evan Glass for Montgomery County Executive. I'm Umbreen Khan, sitting in for Sunil Dasgupta. I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of this show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. And friends, the primary election season is here. Mark your calendars. Early voting begins June 11th, and voting day is June 23rd. Now, a quick note about our process. There are two candidates running for county executive in the Republican primary, and we hope to interview the winner in the run-up to the general election. In the Democratic primary, there are several candidates who filed to appear on the ballot. However, after evaluating the most recent fundraising reports and reviewing campaign operations, we are focusing on the three frontrunners. We believe listeners will benefit from the depth we bring to these interviews. We are releasing each in the order they were recorded. This week, my conversation with two-term at-large county council member Evan Glass. We sat down on April 23rd in a neighborhood not far from downtown Silver Spring, the area of Montgomery County he first called home not long after graduating from American University with a degree in journalism. He worked as a producer for over a decade at the cable news network before finding his way into local politics. Glass found himself advocating on a host of issues, from conservation of the tree canopy to gay rights. He credits his work with Equality Maryland and the campaign to support the Civil Marriage Protection Act with teaching him about the power of combating bias and bigotry with humanizing stories. 6 years later, after the success of the Civil Marriage Protection Act, Glass became the first openly gay member of the county council. And now he hopes to become the first openly gay county executive. Evan Glass, welcome to the I Hate Politics podcast. Great to have you.
Pleasure to be here, Umbreen.
What is it that drew you into public service?
I first became a journalist, and I thought that was public service. Helping other people make decisions based on good information. That's democracy, and that's how you hold people accountable. And so I was a CNN journalist for 12 years and thought that was a public service. And then I started getting involved in my neighborhood, which was downtown Silver Spring, after the Discovery Channel had just opened and popped up. And there were a lot of needs that weren't being met. First and foremost was our sidewalks were crumbling. And when I was walking to the metro station to get to work, I was like, who do I talk to about fixing our sidewalks? I know how Congress works, but I don't know who to talk to about my own neighborhood. And we formed a neighborhood association. They made me president. I did not want to be president. I was quite busy already, but we started getting to work. And within a matter of time, we got our sidewalks fixed. We got pedestrian safety infrastructure installed so people walking around downtown Silver Spring could be safer. And then neighbors said, can you help me here? Can you help me with that? And one thing led to another. And I'm on the board of different organizations helping build affordable housing with MHP, helping conserve.
What's MHP?
Montgomery Housing Partnership, the county's largest nonprofit developer of affordable homes. I was asked to be on the inaugural board of an organization called Conservation Montgomery, helping protect our tree canopy. And then after I left CNN, I was immediately asked to join the board of Equality Maryland and help Maryland gear up for the fight for marriage equality, which happened in 2012. And I was on that board for a year and a half. To have been a former journalist covering gay scandals and the federal marriage amendment and all of these big things in the aughts and 2000s, to then spending election night at the marriage equality victory party in Baltimore with my husband, that was incredible. And so I just kept doing more, and people kept asking me to do more. And here I am in my second term on the county council running for county executive.
What did you learn specifically about the way politics works here, going from downtown Silver Spring to the state?
In marriage equality and the gay rights movement at large, the motto is essentially to share with people your stories and let people know that you're gay and that you're normal, because people just didn't know and they had their own preconceived notions. And believe it or not, the marriage equality referendum in 2012, the vote total was 52 to 48. It was so close that people were unsure what the result would be just a week or two prior. And for me now, I continue in my public life, my elected life, to operate in a way where I work to change hearts and minds. Politics has plenty of people who are dogmatic. They know the answer and they're going to tell you why they are right. You don't change hearts and minds that way. The way you get people to change, whether it's on LGBTQ plus rights or housing, density and affordability, or transportation or education, is by listening and engaging. And that's my style. I ask questions. I try to understand what people's concerns are, what their motivations are, and ultimately what they hope to accomplish. And it's a very personal way of communicating. And it is not a dogmatic style, because people like to hear absolutes, but you can't change hearts and minds with absolutes.
What are the top 2 accomplishments do you point to when folks ask, what have you done?
I am personally most proud of actually my very first piece of legislation, which was the Montgomery County Pay Equity Act. It was not something I ever would have thought of and never talked about it on the campaign trail. But once I got elected, I was bringing my staff on board and they were filling out all of this HR paperwork, as everybody does, their direct deposit, their health insurance. And as I was checking in, asking where they were in the process, my former chief of staff told me that she had to fill out her salary history. And it struck me as odd that that was a form that needed to be filled out.
For Montgomery County.
For Montgomery County, yeah. Progressive Montgomery County. Why are you asking for salary history? Don't you know that there's a wage disparity that exists? Women get paid 86 cents for every dollar a man makes. Black women get paid 69 cents and Latinas get paid 49 cents. And so when you ask for salary history, you're only perpetuating that gap. And I dug into it and learned that those gaps existed in Montgomery County. So I passed the Pay Equity Act, and we got an update 3 years later from the Office of Human Resources, who told us that there is effectively no wage disparity for women or people of color who were new employees since that law was passed. And that impacts thousands of people. And personally, I grew up in a home with a mom who worked 2 jobs. She was a bookkeeper by day, and she had an assortment of night gigs. She was a fundraiser doing calls for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and worked in a technical school. But if my mother only got paid fairly in her first job, maybe she would not have had to work a second job.
What's a second one that when you think about this really reflects my values?
Making buses free, which was a slow burn. My husband and I had 1 car for 10 years. I actually had to get a second car to run for the county council back in 2018. There was no way I could get from Silver Spring to Bethesda to Clarksburg in a day on public transit. Once I got elected, I was visiting high schools, particularly on the east side of the county and in the northern part of the county, and asking kids, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? And those kids were basically telling me that after school, there was either nothing to do or they couldn't get to whatever activity there was because the $2 bus fare was cost prohibitive. So in my very first budget, I made our buses free for kids all the time, and youth ridership skyrocketed. And then we had the pandemic, and buses were free across the country. And I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post and said, after we come out of the pandemic, we need to keep buses free, because in Montgomery County, the average household income in Montgomery County is $120,000, while the average household income of a bus rider is $35,000. And we help people with rental assistance, food assistance, you name it. But sometimes we need to meet people where they're at and it's literally at the bus stop.
What do you see as the number one issue facing this county right now?
It is economic development. That is the issue. For far too long, we've rested on the fact that we are right across the street from the Washington, D.C., the home of the federal government. So many of our neighbors work for the federal government or the contractor or nonprofit ecosystem. And we thought for decades that the federal government would always be there to help us. Well, all of that changed on January 20th, 2025, when Donald Trump became president for the second time. And he and Elon Musk went to town and started unceremoniously laying off, firing, riffing people. That was the inflection point. We had been hobbling along for far too long. We were in need of intervention, but Donald Trump's second term has forced it on us. We cannot look away.
So if that's the number one issue for you, how do you plan to tackle that on day one?
Hiring a director of permitting services who's going to go through decades of well-intentioned rules and regulations that just don't meet the moment anymore. And we can streamline it without changing food safety, worker safety, or building safety. It's just less lawyers, less paper pushing, less lobbyists.
When you say you want to hire a new director of permitting services, what does that mean? Are you asking for someone to come in and overhaul the system? Are you asking for an audit? Are you asking for a task force?
It needs to start from the position of asking homeowners, asking home builders, asking restaurateurs, asking business owners, what are the sticking points you have? Now, truth be told, some of those sticking points are going to be necessities, right? You're going to want to make sure that there is clean facilities in your kitchen if you are opening a restaurant. You're going to want to make sure that there is fire exits and bathrooms and all of these things. That still might take time, but there are a whole lot of other things that are sticking points, and waiting for someone to sign off on something before you can progress. That's the problem. It's the siloed effect of government. We need to streamline that. We need to bring that all together.
Evan, what does it mean to be affordable for affordable housing in Montgomery County?
Affordable means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I am fully in support of building more subsidized housing, which means that the housing gets a lot of government support. And right now, Montgomery County provides $160 million a year to subsidize housing. That's typically what people think of as affordable housing, but it's for people who only make 60 to 80% typically of the area median income. That's basically a family of four making an average of $75,000 a year. Doesn't apply to a whole lot of people, because we also know that there are young families who are priced out of Montgomery County. They too need housing that's affordable, but they might have college degrees, they might have master degrees, they might have a baby, and so they might be paying childcare. And so their discretionary income for housing is not at the level where you need subsidies, but they might not be able to afford what we have.
So what's your plan to address that?
I'm a believer that if we want there to be more housing that is affordable, we need more housing across the board. More low-income housing, subsidized housing, more middle-class housing for our young people who have left. And then, truth be told, we have a lot of high-income earners here. And, if we are going to want to continue taxing millionaires and billionaires, you actually need millionaires and billionaires to live in your neighborhood.
What do you define as a middle-class home in terms of home value?
The average single-family home in Montgomery County is around $650,000. There are months where there are more homes sold in pricier neighborhoods, and the average single-family home for a month might be $1 million.
We have incredible economic diversity in Montgomery County. We have religious, racial, ethnic, every kind of diversity you can think of. As county executive, how will diversity be reflected in your administration? What does that mean for you?
For me, diversity not only means a diversity of skin color and religion and nation of origin and gender identity, all of that, but I also think it will be reflected in diversity of thought. And so when I want to change the way our permitting system is structured, I'm going to talk to a business owner.
How will diversity in Montgomery County be reflected in the administration that you run?
When you are the most diverse place in America, when you are the most religiously diverse county in America, that needs to be reflected in the workforce, and it will be reflected in my leadership team for sure.
The diversity of organizations, the services that they provide that are falling under whether it's HHS or other divisions overseen by the county executive are really vast. Do you think it's working to be providing $600 million in contracts to service providers that include the nonprofit sector?
I actually worked for 4 years for a contractor after-school program and received grants, contracts from the county. So I know how it works, and I know how it doesn't work. The way the county has operated is essentially by just creating new contracts for new organizations to provide new services for perhaps new needs that are emerging. It is unsustainable. And I talk with nonprofit providers all the time who recognize themselves this is unsustainable. And does that mean we need to have some consolidations among organizations to two organizations that have very similar missions, that were both founded by wonderful founders for very different reasons, but have kind of been working side by side. And so there's double administration cost, everything else is doubled. And does that serve the taxpayers? It might not. And so there are, I think, a number of tough conversations about how we provide those services, but there should be no doubt that those services need to be provided. It's how we do it in a cost-effective way.
Do you have any specific recommendations of what you would do differently with the nonprofits?
So it's contracts. And each organization operates in a different way. Some of them do fee for service. And so when they go out and do house calls for healthcare, at the end of the month, they might tally up all the work that they've done and put in for a reimbursement, and the county will give them money back. When I ran an after-school program, once I got hired, I was looking at the county contract, and it actually said that we had to conduct a year's worth of work. And then at the end of the year, show them all the work that the kids had done and the organization had done, and then they'd give us one lump check. And I said, I can't operate that way. You're like 40% of our budget, and you know that. So this needs to be done differently. And they were inflexible. I had to actually contact elected officials, which should not have had to happen, but said, you awarded us this money. You've granted us this money.
So what change would you recommend?
We need to be more flexible in our contracting and procurement, recognizing different organizations have different structures. But I think ultimately we need to get all of the service providers in a room by sector, by mission, and figure out how we can all work together, figure out where the overlap is, and ultimately how to provide services for the vast number of people who need them. The procurement system is making it unworkable, and it got changed.
Through the Office of the Inspector General, is there an auditing provision?
The Inspector General has devoted more than half of her office to MCPS.
I know.
Right? And
yeah.
So...
And appropriately so. We've seen the reports.
That's half the budget.
It's half the budget.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I know that there is availability for the county to open up nonprofit books. That's part of the contract. If we're going to give you money to operate, we need to be able to see your books. I don't believe that's currently being done. I don't want to imply that there's anything untoward, but if you're looking at the administrative cost, if you're looking at other types of things that take away from delivery of service, I think that's worthy of a conversation for sure.
One of the critiques that's been made about your approach is that it's taking too long. What do you say to your critics who say you move too slow?
Look at the results I've produced. People who think it's their way or the highway and do what they want to do have rarely gotten it done. They're a bull in a china shop, essentially, or they're in an ivory tower, right? I think we've had a lot of ivory towers in Montgomery County where we don't need to listen to what people think. We know better. And I don't think we always know better. That's why we need to listen to people. And when people tell us what their problems are, if we are actively listening and actively engaged, I typically figure out where the sticking point is. They might tell me about a problem, but I really know it's so much further downstream. And it might be a contracting issue. It might be a procurement issue. Who knows what it is? But that's what you get from listening. I've gotten more pieces of legislation passed. I have helped so many people in so many different ways because I've asked them, how can I help you? And they've told me.
What differentiates you from the other candidates?
I'm a firm believer that if you are a progressive, you need to make progress. And coming to the table believing that it's your way or the highway, or that you're never ever going to negotiate, that rarely yields results. Because not only in a place as diverse as Montgomery County, but human psychology, people want to be engaged. They're all looking to help. They're all looking to problem solve. And so you have to work with them. And here's the political reality. In the last 2 elections for county executive, those elections have been won or lost by 32 votes out of 140,000 cast and 77 votes out of 120,000 cast. The Democratic Party is divided. The my way or the highway, my faction at the expense of the other 60%, doesn't work. We need somebody who's actually going to listen and engage with everyone, because that's the only way we as a community are going to be able to solve our problems and at the same time fight back against the existential problems that are happening in the White House and Capitol Hill and all the federal jobs. There are a lot of big issues that we're dealing with right outside the nation's capital. And we need somebody who's going to be able to bring us together and fight back at the same time.
This is the I Hate Politics podcast. Politics is about negotiating power. And in a diverse county where you just described kind of the discrepancy between the public transit rider who may be earning less than $40,000 versus the multimillionaire that's able to not only be a business owner, but also live in a home that skews the numbers significantly. Lots of different voices in Montgomery County. Which voices are you listening to?
I try to listen to all of them. Hey, in my campaign, I have had 94 meet and greets, everywhere from a church in Poolesville, a goat farm in Poolesville, all the way down to Tacoma Park, and all points in between. You've
seen how coalitions work together to move issues and agendas. In Montgomery County, as a county executive, you'll have to work with interest groups, including labor unions. Right now, there is a big fight happening over this budget. And there's proposals that have come from your colleagues on ways to move us forward with this year's budget. We're not even talking about what you'll do if you become county executive. How will you work with labor unions, and what's your response to the concerns that have been lifted?
Labor unions are a cornerstone of my politics and progressive politics, making sure that we maintain worker rights. And that's what built the middle class throughout American history. And here in Montgomery County, our workers, the 10,000 workers of Montgomery County government, provide so much of our service. And so I appreciate them. It's not easy work. At the same time, we have long-term budgeting, and it is the executive who engages in those contracts. We have a system that doesn't necessarily work, where the county executive will negotiate, just like the school board will negotiate, and then it all lands on the laps of the council, who are expected to approve all of it. No questions asked, and it's the council who's then supposed to increase revenue or taxes to pay for the decisions everyone else has made. That's not the best way for it to operate. And so as county executive, I will engage with our labor partners honestly, genuinely, deliberatively to forecast out what we can do to support our workers. At the same time, recognize that people cannot afford to keep paying taxes year over year over year.
The proposal of increasing property taxes is getting everyone's attention. What's your proposal?
That's why economic development is critical. I did not support the tax increases the minute I saw them. I knew that they were unacceptable because thousands of our neighbors are still experiencing economic anxiety, and we can't do that to them.
And so if you were a county executive, what kind of tax strategy would you approach?
Making it more friendly to do business in Montgomery County and then taxing those businesses. That's where we need the revenue.
I want to switch last subject here, transportation. In some ways, it comes back to the origin story of that sidewalk. Vision 2020. I hear the stories just like you do of not just pedestrian and bicyclists at risk on our roads, but also we have some really dangerous, high-risk intersections where there has been no improvement. What happened with Vision 2020 from your perspective?
I think what happened was the pandemic, where for nearly 2 years, people were not on the roads. They were largely in their homes, and there was unfettered access to all the roads. And then work started changing. There were people working flexible hours, working from home, maybe not in the office, and people are driving all over. And one critical element to it, there are more road injuries and deaths in America than any other Western nation. And the research I have read links it to the fact that in the United States, we largely have automatic gear vehicles. And so people are on their phones while they're driving because they don't have a stick shift to mind. That's one of the major differences. We need more infrastructure improvement. That's why I passed the Safe Streets Act. We need more automated cameras.
We've had a phenomenal increase in automated cameras in Montgomery County since I've moved here. But the numbers haven't gone down in terms of fatalities or the accidents. That increases revenue for tickets for people speeding, but has that really prevented accidents?
In the areas where they have worked. Now, the state of Maryland has limited the number of cameras we can have. That recently changed in this General Assembly session. And so there will be more cameras deployed across the state. So our own police department will be assigning those cameras, red light cameras, speed cameras, to more locations to hopefully make them safer.
BRT was supposed to be this fantastic business-oriented, transportation-oriented solution. What happened?
The county executive conceived of the BRT proposal back in 2013. He was unable to get it done. I think it's because he didn't make tough decisions in order to get it done.
How will you be different?
The question has actually changed. It's, can we get it done with the resources we have? Because what has happened is BRT has not fully been built on Route 29, Colesville Road, yet there are plans for it to be built along a number of corridors, Rockville Pike, Veers Mill Road, even New Hampshire Avenue is in the very early stages. But where the revenue comes from is a different conversation. I was part of a conversation 3 years ago about finding revenue for it, and actually had gotten some people in the real estate community to support a 1 cent tax that would have supported bus rapid transit. And they got on board, and we were starting to figure out how to make this a reality and codify it. And then the county executive came out 3 weeks after we came to this agreement and introduced a 10-cent property tax. This was in 2023. And one of the business leaders called me and said, I think our deal is dead. So you got to make tough choices. And I know that the business community recognizes the efficiency and the value of bus rapid transit.
What makes you different from the other front runners in this campaign?
What makes me different is that I have never accepted special interest money, corporate money, political action committee money since I've been an elected official. And that allows me to listen to everybody and make decisions that are on behalf of everyone, not just a special interest. And in a county as big and diverse as ours, in an election that has traditionally been won or lost by 0.1%, we need someone who can bring everybody together and has a track record of getting big things done.
Being county executive is a management position, managing 10,000 employees. Can you share with me an experience that you've had that you will inform or that you feel equips you to do that?
During my time at CNN, I managed, and when I left CNN and became a director at a communication consulting firm, I was a director managing a team. And I would say probably when I was the executive director of a small nonprofit, I actually accepted the position and then learned we were in debt. And I did not think the organization had much of a future. But I reworked the budget, reworked our revenue process, found new revenue, worked my tail off. And when I left from having one office, one place of operation, and being in debt, I left having a multi-million-dollar organization with a permanent home and having 6 satellite locations. That is my management style, understanding what we have to work with and then updating it for where we are.
Evan Glass, thank you for joining me on the I Hate Politics podcast.
Thank you, Ambreen. Hi, Sunil.
That was Evan Glass. Our conversation took place in Silver Spring, Maryland on April 23rd. Glass is running for county executive in Montgomery County, Maryland. He is participating in the public financing program and is one of the 3 frontrunners in this race. According to the May 5th filing from the campaign, his ending cash balance is over $1 million. To learn more, you can access the report at campaignfinance.maryland.gov. Glass has received endorsements from the Sierra Club and Moms Demand Action. He's also received endorsements from political leaders in Maryland, including retiring delegate Bonnie Cullison, who represented D19, and former Congressman David Trone, who incidentally is running against Congresswoman Delaney to represent the 6th Congressional District. To learn more about the Glass campaign, visit evanglass.com. Music for this episode comes from the chamber music ensemble Bach Street Boys. Jerome Amon plays the cello and goes to Lakelands Park Middle School, where Henry Stubbs is the music teacher. Ayush Banerjee plays the violin and goes to North Bethesda Middle School, where Agata McLevitz is the music teacher. And Malachi Winder plays the piano. He's homeschooled and taught by Dr. Jamila Takali Hanner. They all play together at the Levine School of Music under the tutelage of Susan Katsarillis. Here they are playing Joseph Haydn's Piano Trio in G major. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone who wants to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you will listen, like, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and your home. I'm Ambreen Khan, sitting in for Sunil Dasgupta. Thanks for listening.